Okay, we're going to get started. If everybody can take a seat. So for our final session, we're going to look at opportunities to develop a better educated olive oil market, better educated olive oil consumer market, and look at that from several perspectives. And so as we did in the last session, I'd like to start with inviting each of the participants to just tell us very, very briefly in 1 or 2 minutes a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you bring to this conversation in terms of a focus on quality and excellence. Let's start with Chef Paul Bartolotta.
To be here. Thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this. It's as a chef amongst scientists, it's really interesting to learn, and I'll add whatever value I can. So I'm a chef by trade. Grew up in the Midwest and worked in 15 restaurants around Italy, from Sicily to the Alps, and then all around in France, and Michelin-starred restaurants, and then started a company with my brother, and I own a number of restaurants in Milwaukee. My journey in olive oil is a little bit different because I thought I knew something in all the years that I lived here in Italy to build upon what I said yesterday. And through this process, I learned and became introduced to Paolo and Greg, and I realized that, and at UC Davis, I realized everything that I thought I knew about olive oil as a very quite accomplished chef at that point in 2009 was absolutely wrong. So it was humbling to say the least, but it sparked what I think is incredibly important in our lives, which is curiosity to learn. So I hope what I can bring to this is a conversation about how in the restaurant business we use the oil and how we merchandise and communicate and create a value add to the diner's experience by taking them on a journey. And I think the entire journey that we do in the restaurant business, when people come in, it's not merely serving food. We're not in the food or delivery business. We're in the people business. And so we're about building relationships. And I view olive oil, I view wine, I view espresso, coffee as a vehicle to deeper enhance their experience and build upon the relationships. And so we use olive oil a lot in this context. So that's a little bit my background, but chef by trade.
Thanks, Paul. And by the way, the Chancellor is circulating a copy of the program. Everybody can sign, and then that's going to be given to the Pope with some very nice oil. So that's what's going around. Now let's hear from Chef Maria Lloyd, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you come to focus on quality and excellence in olive oil.
Okay. First of all, thank you all. Really, I've learned so much here. And my name is Maria Lloyd. Even that is it's Italian name, I am Greek. My grandfather came from Sardinia, but I'm glad that I have something Italian in me. I started my career from 5, 6 years old, and I'm a farm girl. And when I said I'm a farm girl, don't think those big farms, that we have in the States. Very small, but I worked in the fields there. My parents, they grew tobacco, everything. Everything that we should eat today, except, of course, tobacco. Right? I'm against it. So that's how I've learned how to grow olive trees, how to grow all these good things that you need to have the Mediterranean diet, and also about olive oil. I remember myself to get small, like a coffee cup, and the first that came out, from when we had the harvest and we were going to get the aurelio, I was the first one to take it with a piece of bread. That's why I have it in me. I remember that. So olive oil is in my blood. We have a restaurant in New York called Lloyd's. We are the founders of the Lloyd brand with many nice products that we are in almost 12 different chain of stores, like Whole Foods, Fresh Direct, to name a few. And we love children, we love people, and that's why I'm here, because we want to convey our knowledge, to learn from you actually, and to convey to other people our knowledge about olive oil, because without olive oil, there's no Mediterranean diet. We have to tell them that the cornerstone of the Mediterranean diet is the olive oil.
Thanks, Maria. And Rafi, let's go to you, Rafi Tirion.
Good morning. I'm very, very humble and grateful. And Monsignor Romero, Rosendo, thank you very much for inviting us here in this amazing location with this amazing panel of scientists. I'm a food service operator. I work at Yale University. My team and I, we're responsible to provide a literacy program that is focused on food and culture to 14,000 students at Yale University on a daily basis. And our president has charged us, President Pahlavi has charged us to focus on research, teach, preservation, and practice of knowledge on a day-to-day activities at our work. And we do those four things through a series of events and activities and collaboration with faculty members at Yale University, and you heard from both our colleagues, Vasily and Tassos, that we do a lot of events in collaboration with the School of Public Health, but other schools as well, in terms of the literacy and teaching with the students. And we do a lot of collaboration with the food industry, finding solutions that they're not just good for Yale University, but these are solutions that are good for the broader industry. And in doing that, we have worked with CIA and Greg Drescher for many years and other associations in the industry. So again, I'm very, very humbled and grateful to be here and sharing our thoughts with respect to the olive oil and Mediterranean diet. We've been invested for the last 14 years in pursuing all sorts of alternatives and solutions with respect to olive oil. We consume 5.5 times American average at Yale University on the olive oil. We're nowhere close to the Greek and the Spaniards, but we're working our way toward that.
Thank you, Rafi. And let's now hear from two individuals in the association world. First, Teresa Pérez with Olive Oils from Spain. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning. Most of you already know me, but okay, I'm an agricultural engineer and I specialize in agro-industry. I started my career working as agronomic engineer here in Italy, working on olive oils. And after 3 years working here, I came back to Spain for working for cooperatives. After that, since 2008, I started working for the Interprofessional Olive Oil from Spain organization. And we develop several activities, mainly promotion around the world, not only in Spain, but also abroad, and research, innovation, and development. In the Interprofessional, there is the whole chain: producers, cooperatives, olive mills, bottlers, exporters. It represents more than 97% of the Spanish production, and that means that also represent an average of 1 of each 2 bottles of olive oil that are consumed around the world. So it's very important, the role we have to play. And I can share with you that the Spanish olive oil sector is very concerned with all the things we are talking about in these 2 days, starting from the quality, the security, the healthy properties, and all these things. So, and the importance to try to give the consumer all this information. Thank you.
And next, Joe Profaci.
Thank you, Greg. Yes, that's, my name is Joe Perfacci. I've been in the olive oil industries for close to 30 years, I guess, maybe a little more than that. Prior to that, I was practicing law in Washington, D.C. for about 7 years. I came into the industry to join my father's company. My father, John Profaci, was one of the early importers of extra virgin olive oil that was marketed nationally in the United States. He had very good timing in starting in the early 80s. For the past 4 years, going on 5, I've been the executive director of the North American Olive Oil Association. It's a trade association representing producers, marketers, packagers, and importers of olive oil in the United States and Canada. And we have members, including suppliers abroad and trade associations from other countries. What we do, so I'm reading basically now from our recently renewed strategic plan. We encourage, number one, and really the overarching objective of the association is to encourage the widest possible consumption of olive oil across North America. How do we do it? We promote the category. We defend it from attack, we ensure product quality, and we engage with the government on behalf of the industry. And why do we do it? To share the health, the taste, and the joy of olive oil with as many people as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And I think Prokopius, one of our other panelists was not able to join, who's the owner of Creta Verde, and I think you had some comments from him. Is that right?
Indeed, I have received some comments during the discussion. I can say a few words with his opinion. Okay.
So let me start with Teresa and Joe. So if you looked at Jaime Leo's chart earlier, it all looks like good news. The sales are going up. We're planting more olives. We're selling more olives. Everything is good. But we know there's a lot of confusion in the olive oil market. You know, I've seen headlines recently, crazy stuff. It's like, don't cook with olive oil. There's a lot of confusion. Obviously, there's also a lot of good news. We saw earlier that the Mediterranean diet for 5 years in a row is the #1 ranked diet in the United States. A lot of good visibility. So, how do you think about sort of the challenges and opportunities of educating the consumer, also knowing that consumer education is very expensive, and so in a way you have to be very strategic in terms of what you focus on. So, what's your thinking in terms of kind of where we are in this journey, particularly with respect to, let's say, North America for the time being? Balancing sort of that good news in terms of expanding consumption with these misconceptions. And Joe, why don't we start with you?
Yes, Greg, you hit the nail on the head of what I do on a daily basis. It's a lot of effort expended to put out fires of miscommunication, smoke point, as you suggest, exaggerated criticisms of the quality of olive oil, or it's endless. The various permutations of people attacking olive oil. And how do we do it? So our principal focus is to keep the message positive. Olive oil is healthy. All olive oil is healthy. You can cook with all olive oil. You should choose your olive oil on the basis of your taste preference, your budget, and the extent of health benefits that you're looking for in your product. And so we try to keep the message simple and follow that basic logic. In terms of how much we can do, you're right, we're very limited in terms of budget. As a trade association, I have a very small budget. And a big part of that budget will often get expended in defending the category. So aside from writing letters and to editors and journalists and tracking down influencers off of TikTok or whatever we need to do at the moment, there have been a few incidences where we've actually gone so far as to get involved with litigation and other more formal complaints to stop people from making false and misleading claims about olive oil. Most of the time, those claims that require us to take legal action, it's where it's a company trying to market a product and get an unfair advantage by claiming everything else is garbage and their olive oil is God's gift to the planet. So those are selective efforts that we've made. You may know that several years ago, we brought a lawsuit against Dr. Oz in the United States, who's a famous TV celebrity, talk show host, cardiologist, and now running for Senate in the state of Pennsylvania. So, as I said, we've had some selective cases where we've had to go that far. But what we really need is a budget to spend the type of money that the avocado industry did in the United States, where they took a product that was not part of the culture of America and made it one of the most popular foods in the country. There is not a single Super Bowl party in the country that doesn't have some guacamole, on whatever Super Bowl Sunday is. We need that. We need that for olive oil. We need to have a budget to do something like that. And so one of the key projects I've been working on in terms of working with the government is to establish just such a board. This is now similar to what Teresa does with Interprofessional Group in Spain, which collects the assessments from the industry and then has that budget to spend to educate. I've been working hard with Javier, in fact, to try to build support for this concept within the domestic industry. And I'm optimistic that we're making great progress, and hopefully within a year to 18 months, we can get started.
Very good. Teresa, what are your thoughts about sort of influencing the consumer market in some of these misperceptions?
Okay, several comments. First of all, starting from the data that Jaime shared with us, that you told at the beginning, good news, but okay, it's true that 3 years ago, we have established the world consumption, and it follows for 3 harvests the same level. Also, if the prices are high up a little bit, so that's very good news, because one of the worries is that if the prices increase, we are going to lose consumers. So good news is that in this global war, everything is related, and this is good news for this moment. The Spanish olive oil sector, more than 12 years ago, realized that the increase of the production was a reality, and that nobody else is going to do nothing for us if we do not do first. So for that reason, we decide to put money from our pockets, from every single producer and olive mill and commercializer, to develop these activities, to try to educate the consumer, to explain what is olive oil, the categories, the uses, the healthy benefits, all these things. And it is not easy to educate on that, and you already tell it's expensive and takes time. And it's very easy to keep everything down when you start listening in the media or in the social media, all this misunderstanding, misinformation about you couldn't cook with olive oil, or it's not true that these benefits or are the same benefits of other vegetable oils. So this is the reality where we should inform the consumer, and the effort should be higher. We are now working on the following 8-year plan strategy to try to develop and see how many resources do we need, not only our own resources, but other resources that we can put together, try to achieve the objectives to educate the consumer on olive oils.
Very good, thank you. Rafi, let's go back to you. And so I want to sort of dig in more into the world of consumer engagement, and also both how you engage the consumer and how you think about that as a business operator. And then I'm going to come back to Maria and to Paul as well. So you lead one of the most important university dining operations in the country. We know that many food service operators, yes, they use olive oil, but they pick an oil and they check the box and then they're on to other things. You're very thoughtful about olive oil. You know a lot about olive oil, and you've really prioritized quality. So tell us how you think about, because food service operations are traditionally under a lot of cost pressure, and you've gone out of your way to buy higher quality oil, serve that. So how do you work to both bring your students into the olive oil world and also get credit, if you will, for the money you're spending on olive oil? Because you know, if surely in your budget, if you spend more on something, in a way you want to get credit in the eyes of the students. Otherwise, it's hard to justify that. So take us a little bit into the world of student engagement at Yale around olive oil.
Well, Greg, you asked me 4 questions in one question, and I'm going to be as fast as I can going through. And so the notion of the consumer's engagement and our responsibility toward our students and our Yale community, we approach that through two very distinguished strategies. One is, what are the system changes that we can actually implement in our dining programs? And that is basically our consumers, they get the benefits of the olive oil without knowing it, because we put it in their food and they don't not necessarily know about it. And so we substitute a lot of different things, be it in our pastries. We substitute butter with olive oil, or olive oil, lavender. Semolina cake is one of the most popular desserts that we have actually at Yale. And through that product, we actually start communicating the information that we want our students and community to know, that you don't need the butter to actually have great cakes. You can do that with olive oil. So we do system changes without actually communicating a whole lot in front of it. We do it in the back of it. The second part is actually our literacy program, where we have thought leaders and we have historians and culturally literate individuals at Yale or beyond Yale to come to university and engage our students in a very, very large size events and tell the story of what is the meaning of culturally based diet, what is the meaning of the culturally based food, and go through that. And I noticed Dr. Hu in his presentation yesterday actually put that element, socially acceptable menu, socially acceptable food. We believe socially acceptable food has to do with culturally acceptable food. History, heritage, and all those things, they need to be brought into the conversation. We don't look at ourselves as a food service organization. We feel that food is a byproduct of what we're doing, which is literacy and cultural engagement with our students. The question regarding cost, it's something that for the last 30 years of my career, every time we talked about doing something that is right, somebody actually comes out and says, well, it's too expensive. Well, it's too expensive. Sustainability is about reducing waste and actually investing that waste in other things that are better for you. So we did that with utility. We changed our equipment in the kitchens. We reduced the cost of the utility. We took that money, we invested in food. Today, we are focused on cutting back on food waste and get that money that we save and put it toward the ingredients and do it in a fiscally responsible way. But that being said, though, I also learned throughout my career, at one point you have to make a choice and then find a way later. So if I choose to actually have higher product fats in our menus, and I know those are expensive for us, we put it in there and we make ourselves responsible to control other costs to meet the same requirement as we had before. And I promise you, when there's a will, there's a way. We find a way and we find those money to invest it in better olive oil.
The other. Maria, let's go to you. And so you have a very well-regarded Greek restaurant in New York. You have customers come in. Some of them are very sophisticated about olive oil. Some of them are probably new to the olive oil world. Talk to us about how you engage your customers in olive oil at the restaurant.
Well, in the beginning, in the first 3 months, someone was coming in and said like, oh, I want butter. I said, I'm sorry, you have to choose another restaurant. But if you want to have our fish, you have to have daily bringing fish. And the other ingredients that we bring from Greece and from the Mediterranean, it's not only Greek. So I said, you have to have it with olive oil. So this is how we started, with a bit of war. But now, after explaining to them how you use the olive oil, and it's a myth when they say that you cannot fry with olive oil or that. First of all, you don't need to go to 390 degrees, to fry, because you don't need it. You will burn the food. You will burn the ingredients. And you should not fry, actually. So if you use the olive oil the way that we used to do that in, my grandmother or my ancestors here in Italy as well, they used to have it like every day, first of all. They didn't measure it. And that's why we have it on our table to try it. And people say that you don't charge for that. I said, no. We should not charge for something that we're teaching now. So when they try it, they like it. Because you have to tell them, first of all, you don't have to tell them like, drink it, like I have now my customers. They drink every day 2 spoons of olive oil. And I heard Prokopis before that you said that you have to leave like half hour in order the olive oil in the morning, something like that. So that's, my grandfather knew something. So, so then we explain to them how they can use the olive oil in their home. Because for me, it's the same thing. Even if I cook in the restaurant, if I cook in the home. So they have to understand. And how they can understand. One is restaurants, around the country. The other thing is their schools, that we have to teach the children how good the olive oil is. And we should not say that, oh, we can make a recipe that we make with butter with olive oil as well. Rafi, we make it only with olive oil. We don't use butter. That's the best recipe, the best cake, it's only with olive oil. So then we have the shows. But we have to be true to ourselves. Not because a company will come, and I know that because they came to me as well, to say, here, you're going to make this amount of money. Not only just to say like olive oil or butter, mix of that. No. Not to mention like, that I don't like butter. It's that much now, that big. The olive oil is becoming into our society, it's coming in. And I feel that, at least in the northeast of America. So, and when we have chefs like Chef Bartolotta, Cesare Casella, Jehangir Mehra, who is from India, he was not growing up, with olive oil, but because they believe in that, we need people to believe in the olive oil. So we cannot have only the influencer, my friend, because she has 5 million views. That's nothing. We have to see who is the real influencer, because I'm fed up with that today. The real influencer is you people. If you go at the same, the same TV shows or that, and you speak, they will listen to you more than they listen to us. Because you have the data, you have the fact. And I receive that. Every day they says, oh, what's new today? They don't think that what's new, in the menu. They don't say like that. What's new I know about the Mediterranean diet. And this is very good. We have 82% return customers in our restaurant. Chef Bartolotta, I think that he knows now how big is that, right? So, and we never closed the restaurant during the pandemic. We call them like our patients, because we send them home to their house during the pandemic, bean soup, yogurt, a bottle of olive oil, oregano tea, and whatever else they wanted. But this kept them healthy, and they said, this is the way to be. All of these people, they're our ambassadors. It's not only at the restaurant. They speak about olive oil. Thank you. I don't want to take more of your time.
Thank you, Maria. So, Paul, over to you. Talk to us about how your career has been very interesting. You've cooked all over Italy. You've cooked all over France. You had restaurants. You were a very high-profile chef in New York City. You had a restaurant in Las Vegas that was a huge draw. Now you're running 12 restaurants in Milwaukee, which is a little bit of a tougher market in terms of maybe engagement around olive oil, right? So how do you think about engaging your customer? Because you are passionate about olive oil. You want to bring your customers along in that process and support a culture of olive oil in your restaurants. How do you think about that?
So my brother and I started our company in Milwaukee in '93, so we're 29 years old. And I can assure you that in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in 1993, they thought mozzarella was in a brick and you sliced it on a slicer. And that's not funny. And I'll also tell you that in 1993, when our produce vendor, an Italian gentleman, showed up with his one van, and he said to me, what would you like to order from me? And I said, well, I need fresh basil, fresh sage, fresh rosemary, fresh this. And I gave him a list of 15 herbs that I wanted fresh. He said to me, well, maybe you used to get that in Chicago, but this is Milwaukee. And I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, start driving. And it goes to what you had said before, if there's a will, there's a way. My father, as I was growing up, gave me this belief. He said, if you want artistic freedom, you need to understand economic freedom. And by that he meant, without the Pope, we would not have had the Sistine Chapel. And at the end of the day, we all find ways to realize what is our passion or what is our value and what is our belief. So along this journey, I've watched my restaurants in Milwaukee over 29 years evolve. I've watched food industry evolve in America. And I've always, having such a strong foundation in Europe so many years ago, I always knew that as the consumer is going 50 miles an hour, I needed to go 55. But I also knew that if going 50 miles an hour, if I was going 75, I'm going to lose them. So it's very important that we take them along the way. And I guess I associate what Rosa said earlier today when she talked about producing oil for everyone. And Antonia also spoke of this as well, that fundamentally we don't need to be exclusionary. We actually need to be very inclusive. We know that the consumer is on a journey and it's our job to be the educators. We have greater knowledge. So how do we educate and take them on this journey without the towel over the arm and the waiter looking at them saying, oh, you picked up the wrong fork, you fool. We need to be beyond that. We need to take the guest on the journey. And when we speak about olive oil, it's about an experience. And then you add to it, yes, there are health benefits. Yes, it's better for the climate. Yes, it's good for so many different reasons. How about that it's delicious? So we've included this in our messaging, and we've invested an enormous amount of time in our employees, because if you can get them excited, Maria was great when she said, you know, I have my customers are my ambassadors. Well, actually, you are the ambassador because you transmit this to your employees, and then your employees then transmit it to the guest. So it's our job to make sure we have this journey. You know, it was an eye-opening moment when I visited Paolo and Gemma at Villa Campestri, which is, if you guys have not been there, get in the car and go there tomorrow, because it's pretty remarkable. I mean, really remarkable. And because, you know, they had a vision and a mission in the hills above, you know, in the Mugello, in the hills above Florence, and they just were not in the center of Florence or in the center of Rome, and they figured out a way to bring people to them and then take them on this journey. And while so unique that you're immersed in this Medicea villa while you're there, and then you have the olive oil presentation, you have been able to create a commercial as part of the journey, a luxury hotel, and then you can actually sell a little tasting of olive oil. Unfortunately, I'm not there in Milwaukee. I mean, we're getting past the mozzarella as a brick, so give us a little bit of, but we're better than that. But at the same time, as Rafi said, you know, we've included the value of the olive oil in our cost structure so that we don't need to compromise our standards of excellence in all that we purchase in any ingredient. And then for the consumer, it's important that they see this value proposition, that when they dine in your restaurant, that they understand that they're going to come and have an experience, and that you stand for something, and that is about excellence. So olive oil is a key component in that, and we use this in our business. The other example I'd like to make is in the olive oil world, you know, big important wine family here in Italy, Antinori. You know, they're famous for Tignanello and Solaia, but boy, do they sell a lot of Galestro, you know, and their Galestro is great. It's a simple white wine, and their Chianti Normale is just delicious. And yes, they have that super premium wines that they produce, but they have a range in their portfolio. And when you see the brand Antinori, it stands for, when you see Frescobaldi, it stands for something. So when Rosa spoke about her breadth of her oil, I have an Italian restaurant, and I am wildly proud to say I serve Castillo di Canena as one of my oils in an Italian restaurant, and I bring over, and the people are like, well, it's an Italian restaurant, why are you serving Spanish oil? And the answer is, because it's delicious, and because I want to show that Piqual is great with this dish, or an Arbequino will be great with this, but by the way, with this dish, maybe it's Tondi di Blea. So depending on what you're offering to your guest, it's about talking about it and getting them excited and wanting them to experience it and walk out going, gee, I didn't know that Tondi Blea was different from Piqual. And the way the waiter explained it, it makes sense. You know, Cabernet Sauvignon is not Merlot. I could have had a VIII. I get it. And so people learn to understand, if you give them the association. I spoke yesterday about coffee, even giving them an opportunity to have more than one taste and association is part of educating without imposing. And then, as I say, we use the term a lot, we take them on a journey. If I can take them to Italy in my Italian restaurant, I've succeeded. In my French bistro, if I can take them to France, I've succeeded. In my American, you know, New England seafood restaurant, if I can take them to Cape Cod or Nantucket, or I have succeeded. And that's the experiential part. Olive oil, obviously, from a commercial perspective, we only buy quality. We use a more, you know, volume-based oil for some of our cooking, but our finishing oils are only of the highest quality and diverse. I would also say that, Jean-Xavier, we had this conversation yesterday, the intensity of the oil, I tend to buy intense oils because I want to make sure that I make an impact. I cannot assume that a non-sophisticated consumer is going to appreciate right off the bat a more elegant, lighter oil. That's why, you know, when I have these very strong oils, it excites me because I think it makes a point. I also think that the argument about the bitter and the pungency and obviously with greener oils, it allows you also to use less, because fundamentally we have to also keep in mind that olive oil is a fat. It's still fat. So you want to consume the right amount that's going to be good for your health, but you want to consume it proportionately. So if you have a more powerful olive oil, you can actually use less and obtain the same result. And then in our sauce making, I also mentioned yesterday, we make lots of sauces with olive oil as a foundational ingredient. And whether it's, pesto trapanese from Trapani, or the agrumi sauce, or even a simple salsa cruda, that we make with, tomatoes and shaved onions, and then we add a little bit of arugula, and we wilt it inside of it, and it gives you that little bit of bitter with the sweetness of the tomato and the intensity of the oil. It's a delicious sauce over a roasted fish or even just a grilled chicken. So,
Thanks, Paul. One of the things that strikes me is that there are a lot of foods that you taste by themselves and they're self-sufficient, and that's the food experience. Olive oil benefits from what it's paired with. It's meant to go with things, right? And unfortunately, the average consumer doesn't have the opportunity to have Chef Paul Bartolotta standing next to him. It's like, try this, right? I remember the first time going to Villa Campestre, Paolo loved to cook a pot of beans, a pot of white Tuscan beans, right? And if you have the Cosimo olive oil with a plate of beans, it changes the oil and it changes the beans, and it's just something fantastic, right? So just a couple of examples. So let's say you had, because I think part of the olive oil quality story in terms of these more assertive oils, higher in polyphenols, the more bitterness, more pungency, and so forth, is getting that experience right. And once somebody understands that pairing, it doesn't have to be fancy pairing like in the wine world, but it's just basic, sort of balancing flavors and so forth. What would be, let's say you had a customer in your restaurant and you wanted to turn them on to maybe roses oils. Give me a couple of specific examples. It's like, I want to show you this oil and try it with this. What would you do?
Certainly. So recently we were doing a soup with bacala and potatoes and onions, and the server would come over and serve the soup, and I was super proud of my chef, and he said, I have this ton di blea that you like, but I really do like the piquois with this. So he and I ordered a cup, and we tasted it, and we debated which one we preferred. We couldn't come with a consensus. We said, by the way, they're both pretty good. So, we brought it out to this guest, and the server came out and said, this dish would benefit with a little bit of olive oil, would be comfortable, but he brought out on a plate, these 2 bottles of oil. And the customer looked at him and said, well, what is this? And he goes, well, here we have this piquois, and here we have this, tonda di blea, which is what we were using at the time. And he said, this one is from Sicily, and this one is from Spain. And the guest was like, well, what's the difference? And he said, well, they're both in powerful oils, but they're very, very different in style. So he went back to the kitchen, he got another spoon, and he put it in a little cup, and he brought it out to the guest, and he said, here, take a little bit of this on your spoon, and then try it with your soup, and you tell us which one you'd like to put on top. And we waited while the guest had that experience. That customer is an ambassador. That's the point, is that at that moment, they were able to taste it and go, I get it, I prefer this one. And they chose the piquois. And I was, and again, this is the journey, the experience that we're hoping to create on a daily basis. My wife and I, we cook a lot at home, and every time we love salad, and so we would sit around, and oftentimes my wife would like, just oil today? And we'll have this conversation like, do we even put vinegar, or we're just going to take these beautiful greens and just put a little bit of salt and a little bit of olive oil, because the balance is actually doesn't necessarily need lemon or doesn't need vinegar. It's beautiful just with oil and salt. And sometimes less is more. And so the better the quality, the more expressive the oil can be. And then when you taste it with something as simple as a mixture of slightly bitter greens, where you have like things like a Belgian endive, a rucola, and a radicchio, which are pretty much all bitter greens, and then you put a nice strong bitter oil with salt and no vinegar. It's definitely on the bitterer side, but when I've introduced it to people who have never had something like that, they're like, I really get the oil. Where they're so used to the vinegar dominating the oil, now they're just actually learning to appreciate the good oil with this thing. So this is the journey that we have to educate, and it's all about education because the industry has improved. You go to the olive oil section, it used to be, 2 bottles of dusty oil sitting in the sunlight in a clear bottle, like everything it's not supposed to be. Not to mention probably left Italy and sat on a boat for a month and sat in some warehouse in Grosseto for a month in summer weather before it got on the boat. So who knows what was there. Today you go there and there's a beautiful section of oil. I would like to get to a day where he had mentioned that about the standard of excellence and creating this higher level of excellence, that we would be able to have a controlled system where we could ensure that the degradation of the oil was way more controlled by the way in which we handle it, not just because we know we're making exceptional oils and even good oils. So, there is a moment where you go from good to better to real excellence, but I think all of them are to be appreciated, as Joe was saying. I think we're all saying sort of the same thing. We want the whole industry to grow and have this opportunity to see it at every level, where I think that I can make a difference and where I will try to do better with my chef friends, is to get them more informed, because oddly enough, we've got to find a way for our industry to have this tipping point, this moment in which, just either through social media or otherwise, to have it just become a thing that you just would never be caught not having the right caliber of oil in a signature restaurant. And I told Gemma this story earlier. I was cooking with a very prominent chef of international fame, way, way bigger than me. And he knows I was always passionate about olive oil, and he came up to me and he goes, "Oh, you want to see the oil I'm serving?" And it was like 4 years old. And I just kind of went, that's good. And I didn't have the heart. She was so proud of it. And I didn't even know what to say. So we need at our level to make sure that the excellence that we use in our food products across the board is better, including olive oil. And there's a lot of people in our industry that still, as chefs, I think could learn a lot. And that's why I come to these, because I want to learn. I've learned so much from you all. It's great.
Thanks, Paul. And, I think that just sort of underscores also the huge opportunity that still exists to enlist chefs as thought leaders and as experienced guides. Because, this is, for those of you that in the room that knew Paolo, he was sort of the ultimate olive oil world guide, in a sense of bringing you into this world and just sharing different taste experiences and making you think, like, try this with this, and what about this, and so forth. And once you have a way to think about it, it's not in an elitist sort of way at all. It's very simple, just paying attention to what you like and the flavor discovery process. It changes you forever. We're coming to the end of this session. I want to, speaking of full flavored oils, the owner of Creta Verde was not able to join us, but Crete makes some very, very, very great oils, and I know, Procopius, you've had a chance to talk to the owner and share some of those thoughts.
Thank you. Well, Manolis Anagnostatakis is one of the pioneers in Crete about the high-quality olive oils. He formed one of the best exporting companies, Terra Creta, and then he left and he created another company, the Creta Verde. So he asked me to transfer you a few of his thoughts. And actually, it's 3 pages, but I would just say 3 sentences. And he says that now in Crete, there is a new trend for the restaurants to advertise that they use exclusively olive oil for their kitchen and nothing else. And this is a trend that has a very positive response from the customers. there's an increase of the people that are going to these specific restaurants because they say that they use only olive oil and nothing else. And this trend, I think it's a good perspective, but he says that education of the customers is much more important than the education of the chefs. And he says that we will be successful when the customer will go to the restaurant and ask from the chef, please give me my food prepared only with olive oil. And he says that will be the success for the future.
Thank you for a wonderful discussion around the consumer, right, and all that we need to do. Thank you to everybody.